Good morning, Abe. I hope I get to see you next week.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi, Abe. How are you?
All right, so it's 11. We'll get started. Just so you guys know, Rob is traveling with his family and his flight was delayed. So he asked our manager, Fran Blakely, who manages our offices in Rockaway and Franklin Lakes, to do a fair housing course or a session. This is national, so it's not by state. So if you have questions concerning your state, you have to speak to your broker manager. Without further ado, Fran, you do a lot for us. We appreciate your time. You were off today, but you still came on the Zoom. And we'll have her finish her presentation. And then in the end, if you guys have any questions, maybe we can answer them. If not, we'll refer them back to your broker. Fran?
Okay, good morning, everyone. So good to be here with all of you this morning in our Remax family. It's always nice to get together on Friday mornings. So fair housing, and I am, as Adona said, I'm talking about on a national level. And when I get to the end of this, I'm going to make a recommendation because I really feel it will be a valuable resource for anyone who's willing to spend the time to do it. There's so much behind fair housing and what's involved. So it's really, we have to look at this as fair housing for all. These are things that are coming up. I don't know if other states have real estate commissions, but there's fair housing violations all across the country for people who are not adhering to certain policies and procedures. And that really has to do with treating everyone fairly and really doing our jobs to the best of our ability. Okay, so it's more than just compliance. It really goes a lot deeper. It is federal law. It is your ethical responsibility as a realtor. It is for the consumer's protection so that everyone is treated fairly. And my gosh, I'll probably say that about 10 times during this, right? Risk management. It is a liability for the broker if you are out there rogue, answering questions the wrong way. You put everyone in the company, at risk. I don't know about other states, but in New Jersey, you could, if the real estate commission comes in for one thing, they could investigate any single file in an office. So I don't know how that stands as far as other states go, but we also want to maintain our professionalism. Remax is one of the brands where you're like an entrepreneur here. You have the right to stand out, stand alone, build your business. And we all want to complement each other by being very professional about how we do our business. It exists because, and the Fair Housing Act was established in 1968 to eliminate discrimination in housing. Through your entire lifetime in history books, you've heard about discrimination and the Civil War and all different types of things had have transpired in history. There was actually, segregation even by NAR with, redlining and loans going out with, only lending in certain neighborhoods. This all has, contributed to where we are today. There should be access to housing. There should be equal treatment, equal opportunity, diverse communities, and elimination of discriminatory practices. So sometimes we don't realize that we are discriminating because sometimes it's an implicit bias that maybe you've grown up a certain way and certain parts of the country, were more red and blue and, all of that. But, at this point, we are at a point at a time in history where everybody needs to be treated fairly. The laws that govern fair housing are not just your real estate commission if you have it, but the primary federal laws include the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Fair Housing Act, the Civil Rights Act, The Americans with Disabilities Act, that's a big part of it. The Rehabilitation Act, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, and the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. So, if you break the law, and any of these laws could apply, so we are walking on a tight line, a very delicate balance in making sure we do our business the right way. The seven federally protected classes are race, color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, and disability. There are states like New Jersey, you cannot discriminate on gender identity, you cannot discriminate on the source of like legal income. You have to really check with your manager to provide you, since we are all in different states, the individual's backgrounds for the states and what's required if you don't already know that or not familiar. Don't assume that you know, ask questions. That's really important. I do talk fast, so I'm sorry. But examples of additional state protections are sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, source of income, marital status, military status, age, domestic partnership, and ancestry. So we are really, a lot of states have enacted these laws to also have protections in place to make sure that fair housing and housing is available, whether it's renting or purchasing a home. This is what these laws are in force for. Who must follow fair housing laws? Ooh, we are number one on the list. Amongst other people, the real estate brokers, salesperson, property managers, landlords, leasing agents, builders, developers, lenders, appraisers, and HOA associations. And I'm not going to get into the details of all the different levels of cases that could happen, because something becomes way too difficult for you to handle, or your broker really can't give a great answer. I suggest you have your landlord or owner consent, uh, um, uh, speak to an attorney. The activities that are covered with the Fair Housing Act supplies are listings, advertising, showing property, open houses, rental applications, buyer representation, seller representation, mortgage lending, appraisals, and property management. So I can give you an example. So the very first photo I did put up on the slide was a very diverse photo, and it showed many different ethnic backgrounds, races, genders. So if you're advertising consistently and you're only putting out one type of persona for the people who are in your advertisement, you need to diversify that. You cannot just do that, because otherwise it looks like you are not willing to work with anyone else. That's a small example, but it is something that is of value for you. Okay, so please keep that in mind. What is illegal? It is illegal to refuse to rent, refuse to sell, offer different terms, charge different terms, limit services, delay responses, steer consumers, discourage buyers, or misrepresent availability, retaliate after a complaint. So I myself, going back probably about 8 years, had a client. I was going to list the house, and they said to me, I'm very Christian and I don't want any same sex people living or purchasing my home. And I just said, I'm very sorry to hear that. I want to wish you the best of luck in selling your home, but I cannot list it for you. I mean, it was a very serious situation. I mean, you're looking at, in that situation, I was looking at probably turning down, about $12,000. But I feel that my license and the availability to serve the consumers and people the way I really feel they should be served, I could not take that listing in good heart. So sometimes the decisions you have to make are really tough. They are not easy. But please be careful if someone expresses an illegal reason for not wanting to do something and you're involved in it, because you're going down with them. Steering occurs when an agent influences where a consumer should live based on a protected class. Okay, this is examples would include this is a good neighborhood for families. Most people are here are retired. You'd probably be happier across town. Provide objective information and allow the consumer to decide for themselves. Okay, being a source of information is what we do, and it is really important. Regardless of how you feel about a situation, where they decide to live needs to be their decision. You can refer them to different that they should do some research about the neighborhood on their own. In New Jersey, we cannot even use the word family in our listings, you know. You can't even not even say extended family. So you can only make your content about the house, not about the people. And that sometimes is a fine line, right? Blockbusting is the illegal practice of involving attempts to induce owners to sell because of changes in the neighborhood demographics. Never use fear-based marketing. You know, never say everybody is leaving your neighborhood. You should consider selling before it's too late. Totally not good. Not good at all. Redlining, banks refused lending in certain neighborhoods, and discriminatory lending practices remain illegal. So if someone makes an application in a neighborhood that maybe, that a bank might have deemed not as valuable, they would not do the loan. These realities did exist. And it's really sad to think of it, and that's why this entire, not just this redlining, but that's why the entire fair housing situation is so important, right? Because people have been hurt drastically through history, for different things that have occurred. No, it's not our fault, but it is our responsibility to make it right. Advertising rules must never indicate preference, limitation, exclusion, or discrimination. Avoid phrases such as perfect for Christians, great bachelor pad, ideal for young professionals, safe neighborhood, exclusive community. Instead, describe the property, the features, the amenities, the location, and the condition, right? Stick to talking about the property, not about who the property is for or anything about the neighborhood. They want school information, you can direct them to websites to get the school information to do their own investigation. This way, they are aware of what's out there for them in the areas where they're looking, and they can do their own comparison. Advertising examples, walking distance to synagogue would not be acceptable. Located near houses of worship would be acceptable. Great family neighborhood, 4-bedroom home with fenced in yard, right? A great family neighborhood would be discriminatory against singles who might want to buy in the neighborhood. And it's better to just describe the house as a 4-bedroom home with a fenced in yard. They can make their own decision. Disability protections. This is a real toughie, right? Consumers with disabilities may request a reasonable accommodation and reasonable modifications to, now this would be to more of a rental property. If they're purchasing a house, of course, the seller is not going to modify the house, right? But when it comes to rentals, this becomes imperative and knowing what the law is. Examples, they could ask for reserved parking, they could ask to have a service animal, emotional support animals, accessible features, or policy modifications, such as if a building or a condo complex does not allow pets, they can ask for a reasonable accommodation that they would be allowed to have a pet if they have some of the examples that I just gave you, a service animal or a support animal. Service animals versus emotional support animals, know the difference. The ADA rules, the HUD rules, the fair housing rules, rental housing rules, and many misconceptions create fair housing violations. So it is easy. In New Jersey, we have a lot of testing going on up here. We have a lot of testers up here. One recently came to one of my offices and said they have 3 support animals. Okay, so you really have to learn the rules in your state and how you can address that with everyone. It's really important. Questions you should never ask. You should never ask about religion. You should never ask about race. You should never ask about disability, pregnancy, children, national origin, citizenship, except where legally required, and medical history. Okay, you do not have the right to that information. If you're working with buyers, treat everyone fairly. Provide the same listings, the same search areas, same showing opportunities, the same financing recommendations, the same follow-up, and document your process. So you want to make sure, listen, it's up to them to choose where they want to live, but you can't say, well, I'm going to give this side of town to buyer A, but this side of town to buyer B. Of course, you're guided by what their price range is and what you can send them, but you don't want to choose to separate people. You want to make sure that they all get the same information, and that is for your own protection. And if you're working with tenants, you should make sure that you have the same system in place for everyone. You want to make sure that you have a procedure, okay? They call about the property. I will send you the application, do your credit report, and I will show you the property. If you're interested in the property, you can apply for a lease. If you do that to tenants 1, 2, and 3, you need to do to tenants 4 and 5. You can't skip tenants 4 and 5 to showing them the property right away. Everybody should follow the same cadence when it comes to treating everyone fairly. Are there 18 questions in the chat? Oh my goodness gracious.
I'm
Shoot.
following up. You're fine.
Okay, okay.
Everything has been answered.
An agent cannot carry out discriminatory instructions. Examples. If the seller says, I don't want children, I only want married couples, I don't want section 8, I'm sorry, section 8, I don't want disabled tenants. All right. Look, if this is what your seller or your landlord is saying to you, run, don't walk away from the listing. I know it's harsh. It's not what you want to hear, but it is what you should do. Rental discrimination creates the highest fair housing risk, as we do know. Steering allegations, service animal requests, advertising violations, disability accommodations, social media discrimination, and AI generated advertisements, right? So you want to be really careful. You could be tagged for anything when it comes to fair housing. It's really, a very temperamental subject. I don't know how your states are individually. I know in New Jersey, they are really on top of what's going on, and the fines are very, very expensive. Fair housing and artificial intelligence. The emerging risks include AI generated advertising. You advertise something, you generate it on AI, you are responsible for it, no matter what. Okay. Automated lead targeting, predictive marketing, algorithmic bias, chatbots, image selection, targeted social media ads. Always review AI generated content before you publish it. Very, very important. AI can make your life really easy. It is a valuable tool that we all can use, but it is still your responsibility to see what's going out there. Social media risks. Avoid posts suggesting preferred buyers, preferred neighborhoods, preferred demographics. Always advertise properties, not people. Best practices, develop written procedures, use consistent qualification standards, document conversations, use objective language, avoid assumptions, and receive annual fair housing training. In New Jersey, it is a requirement for one fair housing with your continuing education per cycle. So it is an opportunity to learn again and to be refreshed on what the laws are. Penalties, violations may result in HUD investigations, civil lawsuits, federal penalties, state disciplinary action, license discipline, attorney's fees, and reputational damage, right? You are the trusted advisor in real estate. You must treat everyone fairly, and you want to avoid falling off into a category where you are violating fair housing or discriminating in any way. You are out there. You're out there. That's it. Once you become a realtor, you are a public figure. Fair housing is good business. Consumers remember professionals who treat everyone equally, remain objective, know the law, protect the clients and protect their brokerage, operate ethically, and fair housing strengthens professionalism, consumer confidence, and the integrity of our industry. Okay, Fairhaven 2, Essential Fairhaven Education, is available through NAR. This is a really, like, NAR did win awards for creating this simulation. Fairhaven is a neighborhood, is an area, and in that area, there are all different neighborhoods as you go through this simulation. It's supposed to take 2 hours. It took me 3. The idea is you were supposed to sell 6 to 7 homes as going through this process. It is not for credit, unfortunately, but it is one of the best experiences because it goes through history. There are videos that are enlightening as to how we got to this time in our lives, where we are with fair housing, how we need to treat people. There's examples. You have to give answers. And it's not like you get a grade. It's not like it's recorded anywhere. It just is a really great experience. If you go to nar.realtor, okay, Fairhaven is, and go to education and then Google Fairhaven, you can take this simulated class. It's part of the Fair Housing Challenge for NAR. It is a really great program. I did it in 2022 or 21, and I just did it again last weekend because I want to make sure I'm educated. The other class that I don't have a time, like you could go on and schedule this anytime that you have the time. The other class is a bias override. And I took that class a few years ago, and I want to take it again because inherently your brain is accustomed to thinking a certain way, and you want to make sure that you are not from your past, but in the future, moving forward equally and fairly with everyone. Sometimes you may think, well, this is how, it is, but it's a condition of how you were brought up. And it's just been in your brain the entire time. You may not even realize that you're having a bias against something and you don't even realize it. That's another class. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a time frame for that. It's like that's something you have to search on NOR. Bias override. It is offered, but I think they were doing it like in person, and I think that one is for credit, but Fairhaven is not. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen
So,
and
Fran,
sit.
I'm not sure
Yes.
if you can answer this question or they need to speak to their broker. Let me just go
Okay.
back. If the tenant wants modification in the bathroom due to a disability, can landlord deny?
I think I think you have to talk to your broker in your state to see what the rules are, the ADA compliant rules are, and what the modification is. I think that the tenant, okay, and this is a think, this is not a definite, may have to pay for the modification, but the landlord does have to do the modification. Okay, I think that's something in the American Disabilities Act and the that needs to be talk to your broker in your state and um then deal with it. Maybe they need to speak to an attorney if they're that concerned. But yeah, I think that would be something that the tenant might have to pay for, but the landlord does have to comply. And then it has to be restored at the end. Okay, from my understanding.
Thank you so much, Fran. We really appreciate it, especially on your day off for doing this mastermind. Let me
One
see if
pet,
there's one more.
but the other two are
Okay.
not. The only that does state on the. So if someone is requesting an accommodation for a support animal, that's one thing. If it's not a support animal, and there's a no pet policy, that's a totally different situation. So I can only speak to what I have studied and researched in New Jersey, and that is that if there's a if there's a service animal, if there's a disability and you can see the disability, you do not have the right to ask for any documentation. So, for example, if someone were blind and you can see that they're blind, okay, you do not have the right to ask for documentation in New Jersey. But if somebody has a support animal for a disability that you cannot see, they have to ask for the um, reasonable accommodation. I would go through the same process with showing them doing the application, filling out doing their credit score, showing them the apartment. If they're interested, then they would have to send in for a reasonable accommodation. I did find out in New Jersey, I believe it does not have to be in writing. It could be a verbal request for a reasonable accommodation. At that point, if the landlord offers them the apartment for rent, they need to provide a letter from their doctor just saying that they have a disability that they need the support animal for. They cannot you do not have the right to know what the disability is. You do not have the right to know.
Thank you,
Okay.
Fran. I appreciate it.
Okay.
I think we're gonna finish our mastermind early today, but before I let you guys go, I see Frank is here, our mortgage lender. Frank, do you have any updates on mortgages that you can share with the team? He's probably on the call. While we wait for him, anyone has any questions?
Yes, actually, I do have a question. This is Lisa from Florida. I deal with a lot of rentals, and you mentioned you can't ask about children, but I kind of need to know the formation of the house. How many people am I renting it to? So am I not allowed to ask how many children they have and their ages?
You can ask how many occupants will be in the residence, and the municipality may have rules. I don't know Florida law. I'm so sorry. The
Okay.
municipality may have rules about if it's 2 bedrooms, you're allowed to have 2 occupants in each bedroom. Okay.
Yes,
I,
usually the
I,
case.
I don't know. And of course, if it's an adult community, that's a different, and in Florida, I'm assuming there's a lot of adult communities. So I would actually check with your broker or check with the municipality to see what kind of rules they have for that.
But Fran, in New Jersey, I can't say to somebody who's going to be occupying the unit and then
When
ask
they
them
fill out their,
specifically to kids.
when they do their application, they should list who's going to be occupying the unit. Okay? If,
Okay.
right, yeah.
Like in Texas, the lease paperwork says will ask who's occupying the property and their ages. So I don't know.
When you get to writing up the lease,
Yes,
right? But if you're not making the decision not to show somebody something prior to them getting to the point where they're ready to lease it. You're
correct.
not saying, I'm not showing it to you because you have 2 children, in other
Correct.
words. Right. Okay. I have to sign off because I have another meeting I have to go back
Sure.
on.
Ron, did you have a question?
Yeah, I haven't done Section 8 in so long, but I got one the other day. But my owner says he doesn't want a Section 8. So where's the fine line of discrimination there?
You have to release the listing. You cannot represent someone who is going to violate the fair housing law. So you have to let the client go.
So it's okay to so the agent called me on, it was my listing, but the agent called me on and said, would you accept Section 8? So is it okay to say my client doesn't want
No,
to,
No,
never say those words because one, they're going to file an ethics complaint against you. Two, the consumer is going to file a fair housing complaint against you. So the right way, if your client said, Ron, I don't want any tenants with Section 8, you should not have that active listing. You have to release it.
I think if you let the agent know who brings in the Section 8 applicant, that the Section 8 applicant has to be qualified just like any other tenant, that's going to help you a lot because a lot of times Section 8 tenants don't qualify, but if they do qualify, then I don't see why your owner would not want them. So I think if you have high expectations for qualifications, that the Section 8 tenant, just like any other tenant, would have to qualify.
so before I sign off, I just wanted to say one thing. I believe the staff is going to hook up the slideshow. Originally, it wasn't on the mastermind announcement that went out like it usually is because I didn't have time to finish checking it. So I think they're going to put it on when they put it in Mac Center. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you,
All
Fran.
right. Thank you.
I
Have a good.
think Thank you, Fran. Before you guys leave, I think it's very important, but the session that we did today, you need to speak to your brokers because I don't want to give you the wrong information because I'm only licensed in New Jersey and New York. So please, it sounds like you may all have certain questions now that we brought up the subject. And the reason why Rob wanted us to do this on fair housing is because in New Jersey, we had several offices that were tested by the Attorney General. So they have specific people that come out to and test you. So if you're not sure if you're saying the right thing, doing the right thing, please speak to your broker manager and they will be more than happy to help you. All right, looks like Frank is not here, so we're going to finish early today. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and we'll see you next Friday.
Everyone,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.